Hey guys, how's it going and welcome back. Well, a YouTuber had asked what the difference was between the Crosman plastic breech and the Crosman steel breech. As apparently obvious as it is, I get it, not everybody understands, and that's okay. So, plastic breech. Very short, plastic obviously. Very flexible, moves around a lot, okay? These do tend to wear out, especially if you're shooting your gun a lot, okay? You're gonna put at least one or two more replacements on it during the lifetime of the gun, which these things seem to last forever because they're pretty bulletproof guns when it comes down to it. You've got one rubber O-ring in the valve, you've got a rubber O-ring that actually sits inside the tube on top of the exhaust valve, and then you have, of course, your metal transfer port that goes up into the breech. Okay, but the breech actually is not creating any kind of a seal in itself. You're going into the countersunk cutout of the transfer port inlet of the barrel. So the breech itself really doesn't help much, and it's a pretty big hole too. The hole is actually a lot smaller on this one, but either way, you're still going to get some form of a leak no matter what, because you still have your bolt probe, which has an O-ring on it, okay? So any back pressure as you fire the gun actually hits this O-ring and actually causes it to expand momentarily, okay, which helps create a better seal on the firing cycle. But you still have that small amount of leak in here that it's kind of incurable with the steel transfer port, right? That's why people go to polytube mods and try and seal that even more, which they're really not helping themselves that much. It's a lot of work to try and make one of those polytube all-in-ones. So you're really not helping yourself gain any real FPS. If you gain anything, it might be 1 FPS, which is absolutely nothing to write home about, okay? So a lot of things I don't understand what people do for mods, but hey, you know what? If they believe it's helping, cool, okay? But either way, the plastic breeches are very short. There's only about 1/4 of an inch of your barrel actually sitting in here, so you are forced to have a barrel band no matter what, because if you remove this band, the barrel just does this, okay? It's flopping around, right? But it also makes it a real pain in the neck to try and recenter the barrel when you're taking your gun apart for maintenance, or maybe clean, maintenance cleaning, that sort of thing. Or maybe you're doing some mods, but you just prefer a plastic breech, and that's fine. There are people who prefer the plastic breech and they don't mind trying to finicky around with this thing to get it dead centered again on the barrel to the tube. It's a pain, okay? Also, the inability to mount optics on the gun. Now, whether you have a 2240, a 2250, 2260, they all come with this breech. And they all come with the same inherent problem, and that's not being able to mount optics very easily. Now, Crosman does make what's called a barrel mount kit. That's 2 different blocks that you can spread apart to whatever distance you have to play with in order to mount your optics with. Now, the problem with those mounts is they tend to like to do this. No matter how tight you get them, they will move, especially if you lay the gun down or you bump the gun, you just whacked it right out. And then you got to try and recenter things again, and then you got to still readjust your windage again. It is a flipping nightmare, okay? Which is why I don't like those things and I don't recommend them. And yes, I have tried to use them myself many times and had nothing but madness, okay? So Crosman develops a steel breech, okay? All of a sudden, our life is made from miserable to happy as can be. Now, there are some drawbacks, don't get me wrong, okay? There are a drawback to the steel breech. Now, Crosman, when they first come out with the steel breech, you have 2 choices of rear sights now. You can't use this anymore, okay, which is fine. Who likes plastic anyway? I don't. But anyway, so you have this slot groove. Now it only supports one of two different rear sights. The LPA rear sight and the Williams notch sight. Now the Williams notch sight is very expensive, but it also offers a lot more up and down travel and a lot more windage travel left and right. So you can dial in some very precision accuracy with the gun with those rear sights. Okay, the LPA is not quite as accurately set upable, but it is still very good, but you're going to be limited obviously, as opposed to the Williams notch, especially if you want to do long range target shooting with open sights. The Williams is the better way to go over the LPA. Okay, so it's worth paying the extra money. At short range target sighting within 10 meters kind of deal, either one is actually perfectly fine. Okay, but Crosman did make a Breech for a very short time that was notched out to accommodate this sight, because not everybody would want to spend that extra $40 to $80 on one of the other two sights. They want to reuse this one because they like it for some reason. Okay, so Crosman did a short time period where they made that other Breech, but it didn't really sell. So what was the point of producing a Breech that in the end very few people actually bought into in the end, right? So they kind of kiboshed that project and went back to this again. All right, so you had two choices, now you're back down to one. Now, with these breeches, they're very long, and they are made out of hardened steel, which is really nice because they're not going to wear out too easily over time, okay? Unlike these things, plastic wears, okay? So these aren't going to wear out, and they're also got some weight to them, so it adds a little bit of extra weight to the gun, adds a little bit of extra counterbalance, but at the same time you can choose to mount whatever optics you want. The other thing too is they do make what's called a dovetail to Picatinny or dovetail to Weaver kit, so that if you have a scope, for example, like all Leaper scopes that do come with scope rings now, they're all like the Weaver Picatinny base setup, which is a real pain in the butt because it's like, but I only have a dovetail. Well, then you got to buy a dovetail converter kit, or you could opt out and just get your favorite dovetail mount type rings. Either way, you can accomplish the task and mount any optics you want, which is a big advantage of that steel Breech. Okay, also with the steel Breech, you get a little bit of a cooler type handle with it, although very short. You do get a really cool cocking handle that just threads in, okay, which is kind of nice too, because if you're going to change over to different probes, okay, like an extended probe, for example. A lot of people like those. We're not going to get into those today, but a lot of people do like them. You can just swap out the probe and still use the same handle because it's already threaded already, so the threading is the same. So you can just, and if you get custom handles made like this, you can just thread that in place and have your own custom handle very simple and easily, because the probe that comes with this kit is already pre-threaded. So voila. Now you guys, a lot of you know me when it comes to air guns on my channel, and there's a lot of stuff you've never ever seen ever, just because I wasn't always a YouTuber either, but I also didn't put every single thing I ever did, even for customers, on my channel. So there's been a lot of mod parts you guys have just never ever seen and never will. But nonetheless, I've made a lot of these different types of handles, bolt probe mods, all that stuff, muzzle brakes. This is actually one of my own muzzle brakes here, as well as this is one of my own handles. But this muzzle brake I specifically designed for a guy that he wanted, and it's actually a friend of mine, and now that he's out of air guns, I actually ended up getting, I think, the majority of his air gun collection. So I got this back, which is an aluminum brake I made him that was specially designed to actually push the barrel back down. This way, if you wanted to set your scope, for example, to dead center of the crosshair, to dead center of the target, and aim at the dead center of the target and hit it dead center, you now can do that without having to compensate for height for the kick of the gun. Because even with a 10-inch barrel, this gun will still kick. But with this type of brake and the way I've designed it, it actually pushes air up, which keeps the nose down, so it prevents muzzle flip. Okay, these things are notorious for muzzle flip. And this is only one of literally hundreds of designs that I've done for muzzle brakes to compensate movements. Okay, I even did one once that would go off into kind of like a crosshair pattern, so it would keep everything completely stable on the sides, up and down, all at the same time. As the gun fired, the exhaust would hit, and all that air would actually come out in all four corners and give you maximum stability as you fired the gun. So, but even this design worked equally as well. Just the other design looked a lot more fancier, but still very, very functional. Okay. Now, the other advantage, of course, of the steel breech, it's also very long. Okay. So you've got over 3 inches of your barrel sitting inside the breech and already centered. Okay, now you will find that until you tighten up the locking screw, you'll have a little bit of minor vibrational move. Okay, just a very minor bit, and that screw actually locks everything dead on. So this way, once you set up your windage and elevation, it doesn't matter. I can take this gun and I can lay it on its side, and I can still pick it up, and I don't have to worry about anything. I'm still going to hit my target. I don't have to worry about adjustments or anything because I have nothing that's moving that scope. Everything's unmovable. And like I said, the advantage too of the breech of steel is whether you're running a 7-inch barrel or a 10-inch barrel, you don't need the barrel bands. I only have the barrel bands here just for looks, and it keeps them from collecting dust in my drawer. Okay, so I kind of stacked them up like that. And a lot of guys did the same thing, especially in the 2250. You have a slightly longer tube, so you could actually do other stacking formations. Same as the 2260 rifle, very long tube. Now the 2260 actually, guys, can benefit from what's called mid-flex, okay, and this occurs with a very long barreled gun because it's 24-inch barrel in that gun, and you've got such a great airspace between the breech and the front barrel band, because you would have to actually use a barrel band in the front of that gun because of 24-inch barrel. You get what's called a mid-flex that can happen, so when the gun fires, it can actually create a flex in the steel barrel. Just because it's steel doesn't mean it can't actually move at all. And this can throw things off a little bit. So if you put barrel bands near the midsection, now you've got it about around the, basically you got to space it out because you've got to compensate this difference in length. You've got over 3 inches here that's already solid. So from 3-inch you go to probably around the 14-inch mark of the barrel length. That's where you'd put a band or two, and then of course you can finish off the end with 2 bands, so you can have up to 4 bands for 100% total vibration free shooting, which means absolutely zero flex, which means also better accuracy too over the long haul. So there are advantages to even keeping the barrel bands on if you wanted to, okay? But on a 10-inch barrel and a 7-inch, you do not need the barrel bands with a steel breech. With this breech, you are forced to have a barrel band no matter what, okay? And that kind of really sucks because a lot of us wanted to ditch our barrel bands, but unfortunately that only goes up to the barrel length. So even at 14 inches, you really do need the barrel band, and at 12 inches you need at least 1 barrel band. So 12 to 14, you need a barrel band. When you're at 24, you should actually have 1 or 2 near the midsection and then 1 or 2 at the end section. You should, okay? Doesn't mean you have to necessarily, but you're going to learn to compensate one way or another. But yeah, that's pretty much the differences between them. You also get the tighter air seal, of course, with the steel breech over the plastic too, which does really help a lot. You are also upping the quality of the gun by having more metal on there, and you're going to up your resale value. So if you're thinking about selling your gun down the road, you're going to sell your gun faster and get a better price for it with the steel breech being on there as opposed to being plastic breech. Okay, it's just kind of the nature of the beast that we've noticed over time. Generally, a gun should hold more value if it's 100% stock, but that in the air gun world doesn't always mean anything. Okay, especially when it comes to these Crosman guns with your 22X and 13X guns, you actually get a better resale value with that steel breech there than you would with a plastic one, because the majority of people out there want the steel breeches, and if they're looking for a used gun, you're still going to be selling your gun at a little bit of a loss from what you obviously got into it, because you're never getting your money back. But you'll get more of your money back with that steel breech on there as opposed to the plastic. So anyways, hopefully that helps answer a lot of questions. And hopefully I've answered this guy's question of plastic garbage versus wonderful steel. Okay, and advantages of the steel breech. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Do stay tuned for more. If you do want to see more air gun videos too, which I'm sure a lot of you would, shoot me some ideas what you might like to see. And if it's something that I can do for you, then, you know, I certainly will. But otherwise, yes, it is springtime. It is getting warmer outside, and I will be getting back into doing shooting videos again very soon. I'm gonna see what kind of new targets we can make and have fun with this year. Anyways, till next time, see ya!